This is the Starlab Deep Dive. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Starlab Deep Dive, where we ask the right questions, go deep into the specifics, and interview experts about the hottest topics in science. I am Moritz, your host, and today on the show we have a super interesting guest with an amazing backstory that I can't wait to find out more about. So today I would like to welcome Lulu Nguyen, a Californian working as a lab manager and a production manager at the company 4D Cell in Paris, France. Hi Lulu, thank you so much for making time to chat with me today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. To give a little context to everybody listening, Lulu is another one of the brave souls that took part in Starlab's Laboratory Day artwork, a piece of art commissioned by Starlab made up of selfies of scientists from around the globe, all with the purpose of shining a light on the people behind the important work being done in laboratories. So Lulu probably sent in my opinion at least, one of the coolest pictures. But even if you know her, it might be a little bit hard to find her on the picture. So Lulu, explain to us, why is that?
Well, because on a normal day for me, I'm in a clean room that's like completely isolated and I'm covered head to toe. So the only thing you can see in the picture are my eyes. And when I saw this artwork and I sent it to my friends, it was kind of a tricky thing for me to do, but I asked all my friends to find me in the collage, and even my boyfriend couldn't find me because all you can see were my eyes.
Yeah, I thought it was a super cool idea to send in something from the clean room as well. And maybe what was your motivation in taking part? So in this artwork.
Well, as a scientist, and I think something that's really important is that we are scientists, but we still have this creative side of ourselves. And I love that this piece showcases the creativity and also the importance of being a scientist.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I think we'll get into the creativity a little bit more later, because I find that really interesting aspect of your job as well. But with this sort of art piece, would you say your lab has become a little bit more colorful?
Absolutely. It was the perfect timing when the poster actually arrived, because my lab mates and I were saying like, our lab is so boring. We don't have any pictures, especially not in the clean room, because obviously you can't have paper in there. You can't even have paper. So in the lab, you have like warning signs, like the rules to follow. And even our open space, there's no color. So when we received this poster, everyone was so excited to have it. So now we have it in the open space. And I even forwarded the poster to my colleagues, and one has it as her background on her computer.
Oh, no way. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So really bringing color
nice.
into everybody's workspace. I don't know why it's so sterile and it has to be so, well, I know why it's sterile, but I don't know why it needs to look so white and so gray all the time. I think it's a really beautiful aspect of like showing some passion as well, right? I mean, from conversations we've had before, I think you're super passionate about your job, and we'll get to what you do exactly in a minute. But isn't it a shame that sort of that passion isn't sort of expressed in your working environment?
Absolutely. Especially like I am very creative outside the lab as well. So I love to paint. I have this like epoxy project that I'm using with dry flowers. But it's not just me. It's like when you speak to all my other colleagues, like one of my colleagues, she does painting and drawing. Then I have another colleague who works with leather, another colleague who works with 3D printing, design. So everyone is so artistic, but you don't see it as much. You don't think of like a scientist and think that like they're as artistic as a normal scientist anymore.
Yeah, I guess that's true. So one of the issues we've been looking at recently on especially the Starlab Deep Dive podcast is the image problem that scientists have. So jobs in the field of science are often seen, like you said, as something boring, monotonous, repetitive, and so on. And largely we have talked about this coming from a lack of exposure to how interesting or diverse or fun these jobs can really be. So Starlab actually did a study recently where we asked scientists to rate their own jobs in terms of the public perception they believe their own job has on a scale between attractive and unattractive. And researchers in the life science field rated their jobs as quite attractive, with over 75% saying they feel that public perception of their job is very attractive. Whereas lab techs, lab managers, MTAs, and others working in labs every day found that they fared a little worse. Only 32% found that the public perception of their job to be attractive, while over a third of the people who answered found that the jobs in their field are seen as unattractive even. So one of the cool opportunities of having scientists like yourself on the podcast, Lulu, is being able to take a look behind the scenes and really find out how interesting the field of science can be. So you are a lab manager and a production manager, which I believe pretty much makes you a professional problem solver, right?
Yes, exactly.
So what is it exactly you do? Can you give us an insight on what does day-to-day look like for Lulu Nguyen?
So when I come in the morning, I'm always checking the orders that I have, and then I have to fill them and make sure that the products actually work, because we have a wide variety of products. So we have like micropatterns, confiners, microchannels, and so with these wide variety of products, we have to make sure that they're working. And sometimes when you're making the products, it's quite complicated and a lot of problems come up. And the best thing, especially because because 4D Cell is such a small company, we don't have the answer for all the problems. So the best part of being an artist for someone who can be creative is that you can use this mindset to solve the problems. Like, why is it so hard to make this product? Can I 3D print something that can hold my cover slips? What's wrong with my cells? Why are they not making the shapes of my micropatterns? So having this ability to solve the problems, which is the biggest part of my day, is actually solving the problems, makes it easier.
I really like how you said, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. And also with the lab management.
Yeah.
I have to say that many times people come up to me and they're just like, well, the chemical hood is not working. What should I do? And I'm a scientist, so I'm not like an engineer. I am an engineer, but not a mechanical engineer. So, but you like taking it apart, making sure everything works, plugging it in, unplugging it.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Obviously, but sometimes there's a lot of buttons.
No, that's cool. And I really like how you said that it's sort of like a mindset, right? So it's not really about knowing all the solutions, but sort of having a cool mindset where you say, okay, this is the problem and I need to find a different way of solving it, because we don't have, maybe, as you said, as a small company, all the resources to make sure that you can just solve it at the drop of a hat. So I really like that idea. You've mentioned the sort of creative side of yourself and the artistic side a lot. Like, do you come from a creative background, or how did you get into science as a field?
Well, for the artistic part, no, not at all. I grew up thinking that I wasn't artistic at all. I just thought I was first I thought I wasn't athletic. I thought I wasn't artistic. Like, when I was a child, I didn't have these opportunities for me to express it. Obviously, we had crowns and color pencils, but I guess I didn't explore it as much. And then one day I went to a friend's class who was teaching art, and I decided to start painting. And then I just didn't stop painting.
Fell in love.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. It's also, I guess, you can sort of mirror that when you talk about science, right? Like, I think a lot of people don't realize that the qualities they need for science might be something they have already, especially in problem solving, like you said. That's sort of a mindset. And maybe people don't know that they would be really good in a job like one like yours before they have exposure to it and are told, this is an option for you. So I think a lot of the time we're talking about inspiring young people to get into science, right? And sometimes I feel like a little bit of exposure and a little bit of showing them the possibilities could could do a world of difference. So back to my question, how did you get into science? What was sort of the moment where you decided, okay, this is the path for me?
Well, I just remember when I was in high school and I had my physics teacher come in every day, and he was doing these like really small experiments. Something very simple, like he put a piece of paper on a cup and he flipped it upside down and he was like explaining to us like why that works. And he would explain little things like why the clouds are a different shape. And when you just surround yourself and or you just take a seat and you look around you, there's just science everywhere. Everything that you look into, if it's water, plants, the sky, the medicine that you're drinking or taking, everything. It's just completely surrounded. You're just surrounded by it. So when you have a teacher, obviously teachers are extremely important because they're the ones that plant the seed in your mind, and they make you question everything. They make you want to explore.
I like that idea of questioning everything and exploring further. Where did you go from there? What was sort of how did it take you to where you are today?
It's been a very long journey for me because I'm originally from California. And I obviously continued my education in science because I went to UC Berkeley and I studied molecular environmental biology. Sorry, molecular environmental biology. And then I just wanted to continue my education. But as tuition is so high in the States, I thought maybe I couldn't. And so I explored other countries. And as me, just a girl in California, I thought moving to another country would be extremely difficult. But if I haven't had done that, I wouldn't have been able to come to Paris. And because Paris has the biomedical engineering program that I wanted, and they specialize in biomaterials, biodevices, and tissue engineering, which was something that I saw as like one of the biggest advances at the time, like 3D printing organs, 3D printing anything
Yeah.
was just so fascinating to me. And so what I did was I just packed my bags and I came to France, started learning a new language, and 4 years later, I'm here as a production manager and lab manager at 40Cell.
A really inspiring story. Also fits with what you said before about never stopping to explore. So I guess exploring new countries is part of that mindset as well, right? Which has brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you have to just take the leap, and if the country or the university near you doesn't have the program that you want and you're really fascinated in that field, like you should just take the leap and do what you find the most interesting.
I like that message, especially for young people who are sort of maybe not really sure if they should, take a large step like the one you took as well, to see that it paid off for someone and for most people, actually, I would say, to take the leap and sort of go after what you're really interested in is a really interesting story. So, what do you do at 40Cell now? You're a production manager and a lab manager. What does that mean? What kind of projects do you work on at the moment?
Well, we always have projects going on. Sometimes it's the most difficult, most challenging, but at the same time most rewarding part of my job.
Okay.
Because when I had my interview with my boss, they said, "Oh, maybe you will get bored as a production manager." But because we have so much different products and we're always trying to develop new ones, and even when you learn about the different things that we can do with the products, because for one of the most important things about working in this company is that we do in vitro testing instead of in vivo. So in vivo is when you do animal testing, and in vitro is when you do it on like a petri dish.
Okay.
So in a normal day, I will make some micropatterns or another product. and then I will test it. I'll add some cells on it. And the coolest part is that when you're using micropatterns, for example, we have a neuron mask that actually mimics the formation of neurons, like in the brain.
Wow.
And it helps you, it helps establish the connections between the
Wow,
neurons.
that's really fascinating. Can you tell me some more about the micro patterns? I remember you saying that that's sort of like one of your most popular products for 4D cell as well, right? So what makes them so special? And I remember you telling me a story about them as well, with some interesting shapes and things like that.
Ah, yes. Well, the micro patterns, just to give you an idea of what they actually are, they're just like we coat a surface that makes it anti-adhesive, and then we'll print patterns on them like hearts or Christmas trees just for fun. But normally we have like circles or triangles, and for example, the neurons. So this is one of the products, and we can test like the migration of the cells. You can test like toxicity of them as well. And the great thing about these is that they're consumables for other labs, and you just know that these consumables that we produce are going to go towards something very important, like testing for pharmaceuticals or cancer research or testing with cardiomyocytes, cells that are in the heart.
Yeah, super interesting. How much of your job or your fascination with your own job would you say has to do with that feeling of, doing something that can change the world a little bit?
How much of my work contributes to this feeling? I think every little scientist starts working and just hopes that eventually their work leads to something that changed the world. And that's the feeling that I still have. That sometimes when I see the client's name, the university, like when we send them to UCLA and Stanford, or we have some that also go to Germany, and you see that the name of the university or the center is like health center,
Yeah.
and you just hope that the consumables that we're producing will give the clients some result that will make a big difference later on.
Yeah, indeed. I can imagine that being sort of a huge hope that, the stuff that you're doing is really important. And you also do other products, right, for other companies. For example, you mentioned like a PCR machine, which I guess also makes you feel like you're really changing something, no?
Yes, it's one of our sister companies because we're 4D Cell and the other company is Bifurcure. They're quite popular right now in France because it's a quick PCR machine that's portable. So
Okay.
it's making it possible for people to have PCR with COVID and in real time.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
that, yeah, because you don't have to wait like 24 hours to find the results. So it's a huge game changer for when people want to have a very large event or when you're at the airport. And it helps fight against COVID. And during the first quarantine, I was here every day because the whole team was just working to fight against the COVID crisis.
So you didn't have much of a quarantine then.
Not at all.
That's pretty cool as well, though, that you're like on the front lines of really, doing something to change everything about the current situation. And I think that fits very well with sort of what the message you were saying, that every scientist, even when they're young, has sort of this dream of changing the world. And maybe sometimes it means you have to step back a little bit and be like, I am actually changing the world, like maybe just a small section or maybe just in your local spot, but every little bit helps. And I heard this thing once that scientists have a feeling of being like a global community, right? And that everyone's sort of working together like one huge team, that scientific developments never stand for themselves. They're always building upon something that came before. And I found that really fascinating. And I guess it's the same in your situation, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like when I look at my colleagues who are actually the ones who committed their time during this time period, because I was just helping. I was like the sideline of the sideline, you know?
Yeah.
And when I see that my colleagues are working until 11 p.m., coming in super early in the morning, working on the weekends, obviously these people, these scientists are not the ones that are having the most credit
Mm.
for this PCR machine that's going to change how the community functions later on. But it's really them. It's the ones that are staying late in the lab, like face against the hood, looking at nothing but like a gray metallic wall late at night, pipetting endlessly to test the PCR. And there's the ones that really make the difference.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And like you said something interesting there, like or earlier actually, that you think that a lot of people from the outside sort of see that element, but they don't see all the reward and they don't see all the satisfaction that comes with doing that. So I don't know, how do you feel about sort of being a part of that? Does it give you energy?
When people don't see us,
No, as in like being like knowing yourself that, you know, even the small things like pipetting back and forth, staring at the hood and things like that, does that I mean, even those tasks are super, super important. Does that give you, you know, a certain amount of motivation to keep going?
yes, because at the end of the day, when it's something that is your goal, it's something that you want to do, it's a personal choice, it's a personal goal. So when you're doing it in the lab and you're running your tests and your results, because every, like you mentioned before, every project, every achievement that we have is made up of small experiments. And every small experiment that we can achieve and find good results, it's a goal. It's a huge milestone for us, because even if it's a method of doing something, it's like when you're producing something, there's so many different challenges of how to package, how to transport, which mixture, which concentration. These are all things that when you solve this and it's a small step, it's very
Would you say that
rewarding.
that's like the favorite part of your job, those little rewards and milestones along the way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every time when we are finding some way of improving what we're doing now, I swear we have like a group chat and everyone's like sending pictures or comments and just saying like how great it is that we made this like small discovery that will help us in the future.
That's really cool. I have a question for you as well. I think last time we talked about sort of your environment at work being very different from how people perceive it from the outside as well. You know, that there's a lot of young people working there, a lot of creative minds who are looking for the solutions, like you mentioned yourself. What is it like to work in the company that you're in, and how do you think that translates to the whole field of science?
I think that people have a misconception of what a scientist looks like. People might think, okay, a scientist is someone who's nerdy, antisocial, or maybe the opposite, someone who's old and, but that's by far what we see in the lab. Everyone is a lot younger. We're always socializing together. We drink together, we party together, but we all have this common interest of science.
Yeah, I think
And
that's yeah. It's really important as well, right? Because you connect on some level with these people as well because of the common interest, and it sort of creates this global community that that is really not really visible to people who are looking at it from the outside. So I have one thing that I wanted to discuss with you as well. You sort of moved all the way across, halfway across the globe, to pursue your dream career. What sort of tips or tricks or even messages do you have for young people who might be looking to do the same? Or do you have any inspiring words to push them towards their decision? Or what in your mind could help people who are maybe thinking about getting into science make a decision?
I think that people will most likely focus on what they can't do, what resources they don't have, and what are against them. But there's so many things out there that are available and different opportunities that people can take. Because if I had just stayed in California, I wouldn't have been able to do this master's that I finished, and I wouldn't be able to work at 40 Cell, and I wouldn't have all these amazing friends. And when I arrived in Paris, I knew I wanted to do this master's in bioengineering, and I only had 20 euros in my bank account. I swear. and I was afraid. I was afraid to go to another country. I was afraid to, like, another country that speaks a completely different language. I didn't speak any French when I arrived at all. But I knew the program was in English. I knew that the tuition was very low. I knew that Paris was, and also many other countries like Germany where education is free. I knew that there were many other opportunities and so much more for me to gain than to lose if I just stayed there. So my biggest message for any scientist out there is to do it. Just take the leap and don't be afraid to go to another country, another continent, and do the program or the master's or an internship in the field that you like. Because we can't expect that within the next 100 kilometers from where we live that they're going to have all the opportunities that we need, all the classes that we want, all the, and also at the same price. Maybe you can't afford 30,000 euros or 30,000 US dollars to do a master's in the US. But you can if you go to Germany or you come to France. So
I really
just take
like
the
that.
leap.
Yeah, have the
Thank you.
courage, step out of your comfort zone and explore something new. Use the explorative nature that you need to practice science and sort of use it in your own life as well, right? Solve problems. And I really like that story because that's what you did by moving countries. You had an issue in front of you, tuition too expensive, and you solved it by using the one thing you knew how to do very, very well, which is explore and be a scientist. So that's really cool.
Thank you.
Lulu, thank you so much for taking the time today to have a chat with me. It's been really interesting to learn a bit more about you and your story, as well as your motivations, how you got into science, and so on. I hope that through conversations like these or this one, being out there, we're able to show people how interesting and diverse the field of science really is, and maybe start to shift perceptions just a little bit in the right direction. So, Lulu, a big thank you for being part of this episode and sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So thank you to all of our listeners out there as well. Thank you for listening in. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to stop by next time where we will be also interviewing another expert about the hottest topics in science. If this was your first time listening to an episode of ours, make sure to head over to your podcast player of choice. Give us a follow or a rating, or even drop us a line at Starlab International on Instagram and let us know what you thought. Thanks for listening and see you next time on the Starlab Deep Dive.